Welcome, wizards and witches, to the most ridiculous question you never knew you needed answered. What would happen if Slytherin and Gryffindor houses squared off in a game of American football? Today, we're diving deep into the magical world of Hogwarts to determine which house would dominate the gridiron. Before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy this type of content. It means a lot. Also, let me know where in the world you're watching from and what your favorite fantasy novel is. It's always so interesting to see how regions influence what we love. Now, grab a cup of tea and your favorite blanket. Get cozy, and let's begin. Let's start with the fundamentals. American football is a game of strategy, strength, and split-second decisions. It's also a game where the ability to think 3 moves ahead can mean the difference between victory and eating dirt. These qualities align perfectly with what defines our two competing houses, though their approaches couldn't be more different. Gryffindor house values courage, bravery, nerve, and chivalry. Their mascot is a lion, their colors are scarlet and gold, and their tactical philosophy can be summed up as attack aggressively and worry about the consequences later. This is the house that believes the best defense is a good offense, and the best offense is an even better offense. Slytherin house prizes ambition, cunning, leadership, and resourcefulness. Their mascot is a serpent, their colors are green and silver, and their tactical motto is patience, precision, and exploit every weakness. This is the house that treats every play like a chess move, always planning several steps ahead. Before we dive into the tactical breakdown, we need to acknowledge that both houses would have access to certain magical advantages that might raise eyebrows at the NFL level. We're talking about a sport where players already push human limits, and now we're adding centuries of magical knowledge. This is either going to be the most strategically complex game ever played or complete chaos. Probably both. The coaching philosophies would be drastically different. Gryffindor's coaching staff would embrace an aggressive, high-risk, high-reward system. Their game plan would focus on explosive plays, constant pressure, and the belief that boldness wins championships. They'd run practices that emphasize quick decision-making and playing with heart overhead. Their offensive philosophy would be built around the concept of controlled chaos. They'd favor spread formations that create multiple threats, with an emphasis on big plays and keeping the defense constantly guessing. The Gryffindor coaching staff would be the type to call a flea flicker on 4th and goal, not because it's the percentage play, but because it's the kind of bold move that can change the momentum of an entire game. Slytherin's coaching approach would be methodical and calculated. Their game plan would focus on systematic domination, exploiting weaknesses, and grinding opponents down through superior preparation. They'd run practices that emphasize perfect execution and understanding every possible scenario before it happens. Their offensive philosophy would be built around the concept of surgical precision. They'd favor tight formations that allow for maximum control, with an emphasis on moving the chains and wearing down the defense. The Slytherin coaching staff would be the type to call the same running play 15 times in a row if it kept working, because they understand that boring wins games. The quarterback position showcases the fundamental difference in house philosophies. Gryffindor's quarterback would be trained to trust their instincts and make bold decisions under pressure. They'd be taught to use their mobility and arm strength to create opportunities that wouldn't exist for other quarterbacks. This quarterback would throw into tight coverage if they believed in the play, because sometimes the impossible pass is exactly what changes the game. Gryffindor's quarterback training would emphasize mobility and improvisation. They'd spend countless hours practicing scramble drills and learning to make throws while on the run. The coaching staff would teach them that when the play breaks down, that's when the real magic happens. They'd be encouraged to extend plays and find creative ways to get the ball to their receivers, even if it means taking a hit in the process. Slytherin's quarterback would be trained to master every aspect of the mental game. They'd be taught to study defensive tendencies, understand coverage schemes, and never attempt to pass unless the probability of success is extremely high. This quarterback would check down for 3 yards instead of forcing a risky throw, because they understand that ball security trumps individual statistics. Slytherin's quarterback training would emphasize pocket presence and mental processing. They'd spend countless hours studying film and learning to diagnose defensive schemes before the snap. The coaching staff would teach them that the best quarterbacks are the ones who make the defense wrong, not the ones who make spectacular throws. They'd be encouraged to take what the defense gives them and trust that systematic execution will eventually break down any opponent. Gryffindor would employ a power running attack that emphasizes breaking tackles and gaining extra yardage after contact. Their runners would be trained to attack every carry with maximum effort, believing that determination can overcome any defensive scheme. They'd favor outside zone concepts that allow their backs to use natural instincts and vision to find openings. Gryffindor's running backs would be taught to never give up on a play, to always fight for that extra yard, and to treat every tackle attempt as a personal challenge. Their offensive line would be trained to create movement and open holes through sheer determination and aggressive blocking. The coaching staff would emphasize that running the ball is about imposing your will on the defense, making them quit before you do. Slytherin would implement a zone blocking system that emphasizes patience and perfect timing. Their runners would be trained to study defensive alignments and hit the correct gap at precisely the right moment. They'd favor inside zone concepts that rely on disciplined execution and trust in the blocking scheme. Slytherin's running backs would be taught to be patient, to let the play develop, and to trust that the system will eventually create the perfect opportunity. Their offensive line would be trained to create consistent movement and open holes through perfect technique and coordination. The coaching staff would emphasize that running the ball is about systematic domination, wearing down the defense until they can't stop you anymore. The passing game would showcase the most dramatic differences between the houses. Gryffindor would run a vertical passing offense that emphasizes pushing the ball downfield and creating explosive plays. Their receivers would be trained to win contested catches and make spectacular grabs in traffic. They'd favor 4 receiver sets that create multiple threats and force the defense to cover the entire field. Gryffindor's passing concepts would focus on creating opportunities for their receivers to make plays. They'd run crossing routes that create rubs and picks, deep comeback routes that test the receiver's courage, and fade routes that rely on perfect timing and trust. The coaching staff would teach their receivers that every pass is a chance to make a game-changing play, and that sometimes the best catches are the ones that seem impossible. Slytherin would run a horizontal passing offense that emphasizes controlled completions and systematic advancement. Their receivers would be trained to find soft spots in coverage and make precise catches in space. They'd favor 3 receiver sets that create multiple options while maintaining protection for the quarterback. Slytherin's passing concepts would focus on creating high-percentage completions that consistently move the chains. They'd run slant routes that exploit aggressive coverage, out routes that attack the sidelines, and drag routes that find openings in zone coverage. The coaching staff would teach their receivers that every pass is a building block toward inevitable touchdown, and that the best catches are the ones that keep drives alive. The defensive philosophies would be equally contrasting. Gryffindor would run an aggressive defense that emphasizes pressure and forcing turnovers. Their defensive line would be trained to attack gaps and create havoc in the backfield. They'd favor blitz packages that bring extra rushers and put maximum pressure on the quarterback. Gryffindor's defensive strategy would be built around the concept of controlled aggression. They'd run a lot of man-to-man coverage that allows their defensive backs to be physical and disruptive. Their linebackers would be trained to read and react quickly, always looking for opportunities to make big plays. The coaching staff would emphasize that defense is about making the offense uncomfortable and forcing them into mistakes. Their defensive line would use a penetrating approach that prioritizes backfield disruption over maintaining structural integrity. They train their linemen to use quickness and athleticism to beat blockers, accepting occasional containment breakdowns in exchange for more quarterback pressures and tackles for loss. Gryffindor's linebacker corps would be trained to be aggressive playmakers rather than reliable tacklers. They'd emphasize jumping routes and making interceptions over simply stopping the run. Their linebackers would be taught to trust their instincts and make split-second decisions, even if it means occasionally being wrong. The coaching staff would prefer a linebacker who makes 5 tackles and 2 interceptions over one who makes 10 tackles and no big plays. In the secondary, Gryffindor would emphasize press coverage and physical play. Their defensive backs would be trained to jam receivers at the line and disrupt passing routes through aggressive contact. They'd favor safety blitzes and corner blitzes that bring extra pressure, believing that forcing quick throws is more effective than playing perfect coverage. Slytherin would run a disciplined defense that emphasizes assignment football and systematic domination. Their defensive line would be trained to control gaps and funnel running plays to the linebackers. They'd favor coverage schemes that take away the offense's preferred routes and force them into difficult throws. Slytherin's defensive strategy would be built around the concept of perfect execution and patience. They'd run a lot of zone coverage that allows their defensive backs to read the quarterback and jump routes. Their linebackers would be trained to stay disciplined and trust the system to create opportunities. The coaching staff would emphasize that defense is about making the offense earn every yard and eventually wearing them down. Their defensive line would use a gap control approach that prioritizes maintaining structural soundness over creating individual highlights. They train their linemen to engage blockers and direct plays toward predetermined areas where their linebackers would be positioned. The philosophy would be that consistent execution trumps occasional spectacular moments. Slytherin's linebacker corps would be trained to be reliable tacklers and intelligent readers of offensive formations. They'd emphasize proper pursuit angles and gang tackling over individual heroics. Their linebackers would be taught to trust their preparation and make decisions based on film study rather than instinct. The coaching staff would prefer a linebacker who makes 10 tackles and no mistakes over one who makes 5 tackles and 2 interceptions. In the secondary, Slytherin would emphasize zone coverage and intelligent positioning. Their defensive backs would be trained to read the quarterback's eyes and anticipate throws rather than simply covering their assigned receiver. They'd favor safety rotations and defensive adjustments that confuse the offense while maintaining sound coverage principles. The special teams units would reflect each house's fundamental approach to the game. Gryffindor's special teams would be aggressive and risk-taking. Their punt coverage would focus on creating turnovers and blocking kicks. They'd be the type of team that would attempt fake punts and surprise onside kicks, believing that special teams is another opportunity to make game-changing plays. Gryffindor's kicking game would emphasize power and distance. Their kicker would be trained to attempt field goals from long range and try to boom every punt as far as possible. The coaching staff would teach them that special teams is about field position and momentum, and that sometimes the boldest decision is the right decision. Slytherin's special teams would be disciplined and systematic. Their punt coverage would focus on perfect lanes and consistent tackles. They'd be the type of team that would use their special teams to control field position and set up their offense for success, understanding that field position is often more valuable than flashy plays. Slytherin's kicking game would emphasize accuracy and consistency. Their kicker would be trained to make high-percentage kicks and place punts with precision. The coaching staff would teach them that special teams is about winning the hidden yardage game and that consistent execution is more valuable than spectacular individual plays. Now let's examine how these philosophical differences would play out in an actual game. The opening strategy would set the tone for everything that follows. Gryffindor would probably elect to receive the opening kickoff, because that's consistent with their aggressive, take-charge mentality. They'd want to establish early momentum and put points on the board quickly. Their opening drive would likely feature a lot of play-action passes and deep routes, trying to establish their vertical passing game immediately. The coaching staff would script several high-impact plays designed to test Slytherin's defense and potentially create an early score. They'd be willing to take risks on first and second down, believing that aggressive play calling early in the game can set the tone for the entire contest. Slytherin would probably choose to kick off, because that's consistent with their patient, strategic approach. They'd want to see how Gryffindor's offense operates and gather information that they can use to make adjustments. Their defensive game plan would focus on stopping the big play and forcing Gryffindor to sustain long drives. When Slytherin gets their first offensive possession, they'd likely come out with a conservative game plan focused on establishing the running game and testing Gryffindor's defensive discipline. They'd script several running plays designed to probe different gaps and see how Gryffindor's defense responds to various formations. They'd be content to take what the defense gives them and slowly build their offensive rhythm. The first quarter would be a chess match between contrasting philosophies. Gryffindor would be seeking the quick strike, probably attempting to connect on deep passes or break long runs. They'd use motion and misdirection to create confusion and hopefully catch Slytherin's defense unprepared. Their play calling would be bold, with frequent third down attempts and readiness to attempt fourth down conversions. Gryffindor's opening script would likely include several trick plays designed to create early momentum. They might attempt a reverse handoff on their second play, or use a wide receiver to throw a deep pass to a running back. The coaching staff would believe that establishing psychological dominance early is more important than methodically building a lead. Their tempo would be fast and aggressive, designed to prevent Slytherin's defense from making adjustments between plays. They'd use no-huddle offense to keep the defense on their heels and force them to make quick decisions without perfect information. The philosophy would be that speed and aggression can overcome superior preparation if applied correctly. Slytherin would be content to play a more methodical game, probably focusing on short passes and consistent running plays. They'd use their pre-snap reads to identify Gryffindor's defensive weaknesses and slowly exploit them. Their play calling would be conservative, with an emphasis on maintaining possession and avoiding turnovers. Slytherin's opening script would be designed to test Gryffindor's defensive discipline and identify areas of weakness for later exploitation. They'd run several formation shifts and motion plays designed to gauge how Gryffindor's defense adjusts to different looks. Every play would be gathering information for use later in the game. Their tempo would be controlled and deliberate, designed to maximize the effectiveness of their preparation. They'd use the full play clock to make adjustments based on what they see from the defense. The philosophy would be that perfect execution of simple plays is more effective than imperfect execution of complex ones. The red zone strategies would showcase the most fundamental differences between the houses. Gryffindor would favor bold, high-risk plays that could result in either touchdowns or turnovers. They'd be willing to throw fade routes into tight coverage or attempt running plays that require perfect execution. Their red zone philosophy would be that aggression and courage can overcome any defensive advantage. Slytherin would favor systematic, high-percentage plays that gradually wear down the defense. They'd use pick plays and rub routes to create small advantages, then exploit those advantages with precise execution. Their red zone philosophy would be that patience and preparation will eventually create the perfect opportunity for a score. The second quarter would be where both teams' strengths and weaknesses would really start to show. Gryffindor's aggressive approach would probably generate some big plays, but it would also create opportunities for Slytherin to capitalize on mistakes. Their willingness to take risks would eventually lead to some spectacular successes, but also some costly failures. Slytherin's methodical approach would start to wear down Gryffindor's defense. Their consistent running game would begin to create bigger gaps, and their systematic passing attack would start to find more open receivers. They'd be content to take their time and let their superior preparation slowly take control of the game. The third quarter would be where conditioning and depth would become crucial factors. Gryffindor's aggressive style would start to take its toll on their own players, as the constant high-energy plays would begin to wear them down. Their defensive players would start to miss tackles that they made easily in the first half, and their offensive line would start to struggle with protection. This is where Gryffindor's coaching staff would face their biggest challenge. Their aggressive philosophy works best when players are fresh and can execute at full speed. As fatigue sets in, the margin for error on high-risk plays becomes smaller, and the potential for costly mistakes increases. The coaching staff would need to decide whether to stick with their aggressive approach or adjust to a more conservative style. Gryffindor's tendency to use their starters heavily would begin to show as the game progresses. Their best players would be getting more snaps than Slytherin starters, which could create a significant advantage early but becomes a liability as the game wears on. The coaching staff would need to balance their desire to have their best players on the field with the need to keep them fresh for crucial moments. Slytherin's patient approach would begin to pay dividends. Their players would be fresher because they'd been playing a more controlled style, and their superior preparation would allow them to make better adjustments. They'd start to dominate the line of scrimmage and control the pace of the game. This is where Slytherin's depth and systematic approach would really shine. Their coaching staff would have been rotating players regularly throughout the game, keeping their starters fresh for the crucial final quarter. Their second-string players would be nearly as well prepared as their starters, because the systematic approach doesn't rely on individual brilliance. Slytherin's emphasis on conditioning and preparation would become apparent as their players maintain their execution level while Gryffindor's begins to decline. Their offensive line would start to create bigger holes as Gryffindor's defensive line tires, and their defensive players would start to make more tackles as Gryffindor's offensive players lose their edge. The adjustments made during halftime would showcase each house's approach to problem solving. Gryffindor's coaching staff would likely make bold changes designed to create new opportunities for big plays. They might switch to a completely different offensive formation or implement a new defensive scheme designed to confuse Slytherin's methodical approach. Slytherin's coaching staff would make subtle but effective adjustments based on their careful observation of the first half. They'd identify specific tendencies in Gryffindor's play calling and adjust their defensive alignment accordingly. Their changes would be less dramatic but more precisely targeted to exploit specific weaknesses they'd identified. The fourth quarter would be where both houses' fundamental characteristics would be put to the ultimate test. Gryffindor would be facing adversity, probably trailing on the scoreboard but still believing in their ability to make game-changing plays. Their coaching staff would abandon any pretense of conservatism and go all out with their most aggressive play calling. This is where Gryffindor's courage would truly shine. They'd be ready to attempt plays that other teams would never consider, believing that superior heart and determination could overcome any tactical disadvantage. They'd attempt fourth down conversions, try two-point conversions, and generally play with the kind of fearless intensity that creates legendary comebacks. Slytherin would be in their element, probably holding a lead and looking to close out the game. Their coaching staff would stick to their systematic approach, making the plays they'd practiced hundreds of times and trusting their preparation to carry them through. They'd be content to run the clock and force Gryffindor to make perfect plays under pressure. The key strategic battle would be Slytherin's patient methodology versus Gryffindor's desperate aggression. Slytherin would be trying to control the game through superior field position and mistake-free football. Gryffindor would be trying to create the kind of explosive plays that can change the momentum of an entire game in a single moment. The final few minutes would showcase everything that makes both houses special. Gryffindor would be making the kind of plays that seem impossible, probably converting several third-and-long situations through pure determination and refusal to give up. Their offensive line would be giving their quarterback just enough time to make throws that shouldn't work, and their receivers would be making catches in traffic that would make highlight reels for decades. Gryffindor's 2-minute drill would be a thing of beauty, combining their natural aggression with the kind of clutch performance that defines their house. They'd be willing to attempt passes that other teams would never consider, trusting their receivers to make contested catches and their quarterback to fit balls into impossible windows. Their hurry-up offense would be designed to prevent Slytherin from making defensive adjustments. The crowd would be on its feet as Gryffindor drives down the field, making play after play that seems to defy logic. Their receivers would be making catches over the middle despite knowing they're about to get hit, and their running backs would be fighting for every yard like their lives depend on it. This is where Gryffindor's courage and determination would be most apparent. But Slytherin's superior preparation and strategic thinking would ultimately prove decisive. They'd make the kind of subtle adjustments that slowly but surely shut down Gryffindor's comeback attempt. Their defensive players would be in perfect position to make crucial stops, and their offensive players would make the kind of mistake-free plays that ice games. Slytherin's defensive adjustments would be masterful, taking advantage of Gryffindor's aggressive tendencies to create opportunities for game-changing plays. They'd use Gryffindor's own aggression against them, baiting them into making the kind of risky throws that can be intercepted. Their defensive backs would be in perfect position because they'd studied every tendency and knew exactly what Gryffindor would try to do. When Slytherin gets the ball back with a chance to ice the game, they'd run exactly the kind of methodical drive that defines their house. Short passes, consistent running plays, and perfect clock management would combine to create a drive that's both boring and beautiful. They take what the defense gives them and never force anything, trusting their preparation to create opportunities. The game management in the final minutes would be where Slytherin's systematic approach really shines. They'd know exactly how much time they need to run off the clock, which plays work best in specific situations, and how to maintain possession without taking unnecessary risks. Their coaching staff would have prepared for every possible scenario and would execute their plan with machine-like precision. Gryffindor's final defensive stand would be heroic but ultimately futile. They'd make several spectacular plays that would keep the game interesting, but Slytherin's systematic approach would be too much to overcome. Every time Gryffindor would make a big play, Slytherin would respond with exactly the right counter move, like a chess master who's been thinking 5 moves ahead all along. The final score would probably be something like 21-14, with Slytherin winning in a game that was much closer than many expected. Gryffindor would have played with incredible heart and made some truly spectacular plays, but Slytherin's superior systematic approach and tactical discipline would ultimately carry the day. The post-game analysis would reveal that this was really a victory for preparation over inspiration, method over madness, and tactical brilliance over raw courage. Slytherin's coaching staff would have made better adjustments, their players would have executed more consistently, and their overall game plan would have been more sustainable over 4 quarters of football. Gryffindor's coaching staff would probably point to several plays that could have changed the outcome, and they'd be right. Their aggressive approach created several opportunities that could have swung the game in their favor. But football is a game of consistency as much as it is a game of big plays, and Slytherin's methodical approach would have given them more opportunities to succeed. The real lesson would be that both approaches have their merits, but in a game as complex and demanding as football, systematic preparation and tactical discipline tend to win out over raw courage and aggressive play calling. Gryffindor's heart and determination would make them incredibly dangerous opponents, but Slytherin's intelligence and strategic thinking would give them the tools they need to control the game. In the end, this would be a victory for the house that best understood the fundamental nature of football itself. The sport rewards preparation, systematic execution, and the ability to make correct decisions under pressure. While courage and determination are certainly important, they're not enough by themselves to overcome superior strategy and tactical brilliance. The beauty of this matchup is that it would showcase two completely different philosophies of how to approach competition. Gryffindor's belief in courage and bold action would create some unforgettable moments, while Slytherin's emphasis on cunning and strategic thinking would demonstrate the power of systematic preparation. Both houses would learn valuable lessons from this game. Gryffindor would discover that courage without strategy can lead to costly mistakes, while Slytherin would learn that all the preparation in the world means nothing if you don't execute when it matters most. The ideal approach would probably incorporate elements of both philosophies, the strategic thinking of Slytherin combined with the determination and courage of Gryffindor. And if you think this entire analysis is completely ridiculous, just remember that we're talking about a world where the most popular sport involves people flying around on broomsticks chasing a ball with wings while trying to hit other balls with bats. By comparison, magical American football seems almost reasonable. At least in football, gravity still works the same way for everyone.